Testing, testing, testing. I think it's recording now. Okay, this is Emily Adams making this recording on the evening of October 12th. I'm making this recording because my note-taking abilities are, lacking, and so I'm trying to go to an audio notes method. Anyways, none of that is important. I'm currently in an attic at a small house outside of Boston in an effort to dig up some information on my decade-long investigation piece for the Herald on what I've been calling TheHuntsman. I'm in this attic because a woman named Bethany contacted me after she uncovered an old trunk in her grandparents' home. Her grandmother recently died, and she was cleaning out the house for an estate sale. But what she found in this trunk surprised her. I guess she Googled the contents of the trunk and stumbled on some of my articles. She knew that her grandfather was a history buff and a bit of an armchair detective, but she really didn't know what to make of what she found. So she asked me to take a look at what she'd discovered. So, here we are. Let's see what we have. There's this old music box. I wonder if it works. Oh, there you go. What else is there? Okay, here's the letter that she asked me to look at first. It is dated January 22nd, 1708, from someone by the name of Henrik Müller. It looks like it's written in German and then translated into English on the back. I will read the English version since I don't know German. It reads as follows. To whom it may concern, I am writing this to document and hopefully preserve the knowledge that I've gathered over countless years about the Huntsman of Germany. I think some of what is commonly known about the Huntsman is true, however some is not. It has been my life's work to research the Huntsman, but I am getting old, so I don't want this to get lost in history after I die. The origins of the Huntsman can be traced back to a man in Germany named Hans Hogenteufel. A decade of reporting on this story and I still butcher that last name. Anyways, back to the letter. Hans was a very poor man that spent most of his days drinking and wandering the streets begging for money. He had very few friends, no family, and thus no future prospects in life until one fateful day in 1511. That day, he had far too much to drink and started to wander through the woods outside of town. As he stumbled through the thick brush and trees, he tripped and fell flat on his face. As he gathered himself and rose to his feet, he was shocked by what was standing in front of him. There was some differing accounts about exactly what it was standing there, but in each account, it wasn't fully human. Some accounts say it was a huge half-human, half-stag, while others say it had the face of a man, but hoofs and horns like a mountain goat. Whatever it was terrified Hans because it towered over him with its massive frame. After what must have felt like an eternity to Hans, the creature spoke in a deep, booming voice. It told him that it could grant Hans immense wealth and prosperity, but in exchange, Hans would have to do whatever it asked him to do without question. As long as Hans kept up his end of the bargain, this prosperity would continue in perpetuity until he broke the pact. By this point in Hans's life, he had sunk about as low as you could go, so he was a bit desperate. Hans asked what he would need to do in exchange for this fortune. He expected that the answer wouldn't be pleasant. The massive creature then began to explain that it was put on Earth to punish many of those that committed murder but were not prosecuted for their crimes. Each year, one person guilty of murder but escaped from the executioner's sword would need to be held accountable for their crime. He continued to explain that since it was not human, it was not permitted to carry out the punishments. Therefore, it had to use a human to carry out the punishment by beheading the chosen guilty people. The creature's previous human had served him well for centuries, but eventually broke the pact and therefore his soul left the earth. Okay, there's very interesting background information in this letter that seems to line up with what I've uncovered during my research. Let me skim some of these paragraphs to see if there's anything else interesting. Okay. Yes, this looks interesting. The symbols. I wonder if this lines up with what I saw during my trip to Germany years ago. Let me see. Where are those Polaroids that I took? Good thing I brought my files. Here they are. It's been years since I looked at these. I remember these 4 photos of the symbols that were engraved in the trees. Now that I have these in front of me, let me see what the letter has to say about them. It reads, "And so the creature carved 4 symbols into 4 different trees. Then it used one of his giant twin swords to make a cut in right hand of Hans. The creature used the blood from Hans to fill in the carved symbols, and thus the blood oath was signed, and Hans was now the servant of the creature." Okay, I think each of the 4 symbols correspond to a portion of the oath. The oath reads as follows: "Person makes blood oath, promises to eliminate the guilty." Okay, interesting. I think that information relates to the photos that I took, because I see 4 symbols carved into 4 different trees, all filled with red. If I remember correctly, there were also Roman numerals carved into the trees next to the symbols. Ah, yes, there they are. Okay, this symbol looks like a stick figure person with one arm up and one arm down, and yep, there it is. Looks like a Roman numeral 5 next to it. Okay, next we have what looks like dripping blood with a Roman numeral 1. Then there's an X-looking symbol with the numerals for 15. Finally, there's what looks like 3 claw marks. I'm having trouble making out the Roman numeral for that one. These old Polaroids aren't the best. Maybe that's 2? Yeah, I think that's 2. So each symbol must correspond to a portion of the oath. Yes, makes sense. Person, the dripping blood means blood oath. The X must be eliminate or kill, I guess, and the claw marks must represent the guilty. Okay, that's all interesting, but what does that tell me? I'm not sure what any of that means. Well, maybe that information will prove useful in the future, because that doesn't seem to help me with anything today. Let's see, what else does this chest hold? Is there anything else on this music box? Nothing on the top. Oh, here I see something engraved on the bottom. What does that say? It says, "Lost, blank hunting, blank, minus gray, blank, and finally bag of blank." Let me read that back. Lost, blank, hunting, blank, minus gray, blank, and finally bag of blank. Okay, not sure what that means either. This chest seems to be producing more mysteries than answers for me. Nothing else on the music box, but there are more things in the chest. Here's another old paper. Oh, I recognize this. This is the story about the woman in the woods that encountered the huntsman. I pretty much have this story memorized by now, but let me see if there's anything different in the version on this paper. It pretty much lines up with what I know, but there are a few more details. Let me just summarize the story on this paper. Basically, a German woman was in the woods one day in the mid-1500s. I think the woods were called Lost Woods. Yep, that's what the paper says too. Lost Woods. Anyways, she heard the sound of a hunting horn. The sound of the horn kept getting louder and louder, as if someone was approaching her. All of a sudden, there was a man on a huge grey horse standing in front of her. The man on the grey horse then spoke to her and said, "Have you taken a whole bag of acorns and nobody tried to punish you?" The woman looked down at the bag of acorns and replied, "No, the foresters are very kind to the poor and they have done nothing to me. The Lord have mercy on my sins." Now, keep in mind the woman was all by herself in the woods with this strange man, so naturally she was scared. After a few seconds of silence, the man spoke again and said, "Ye do well to pray to God to forgive you your sins. It was never my good lot to do so." And with that, he rode off on his horse. My interpretation of that story has always been that the man on the horse, probably Hans, spared the life of the woman because although he thought she was guilty of stealing acorns, she was not guilty of murder. Interesting, but once again, nothing useful to me today. Let's dig deeper in this chest. Okay, I just found a folder. What's in here? Oh, this is what Bethany was talking about before I climbed into the attic. She was telling me that her grandfather was obsessed with a cold case where a man was beheaded in a small town. The body was discovered in a river without its head and had been badly decomposed. Therefore, the body was never positively identified. She said that he talked about the case all the time and hunted down whatever information he could find on the case. He claimed that he was getting ready to crack the case, but unfortunately, his health and his mind began to diminish. He passed about a year ago. After he passed, Bethany's grandmother put this folder in this chest. Bethany didn't understand why she put the folder in with this other stuff, but maybe they are related somehow? Yes, I remember this story now. Since my main research centers around a man that rides a horse beheading people, I naturally get sent information anytime there's a case where someone is beheaded. In almost every case, it is totally unrelated to the Huntsman, but maybe this case is connected. Maybe the beheaded person in this case was one of the Huntsman's victims. Wow, this folder has an overwhelming number of newspaper clippings. Luckily, there are underlined parts as well as notes in the margins. Let's see. This part says that the victim could not be positively identified because the head was never found, and that no one in the area could positively identify the body. The only identifying mark on the body was a horseshoe brand tattooed on his arm with the initials WCR in the center. I wonder what WCR stands for. It goes on to say that although the body could not be tied to a specific known person, locals suspected that the victim was a man that had recently wandered into the town. The man was extremely secretive. No one in town knew where he came from or why he suddenly moved to town. Here's another underlined section in another newspaper that claims that a bartender in town was casually chatting with the man one night. According to the bartender, the man said something about trouble in Ohio forced him to move to town. After the man said that, he started acting very nervous and tried to change the subject before paying his tab and leaving the bar. The bartender was always suspicious of the man after hearing about, quote, trouble in Ohio, followed by the man's suspicious behavior. One last thing that catches my eye is a note written in one of the margins. It says, third letter in last name, convert to number. Third letter in last name? Whose last name? The victim? Convert to number? How do you convert a letter to a number? Not sure what to make of that. Bethany did say that her grandfather was suffering from dementia towards the end, so maybe that is nothing, but then again, maybe it's something. I just don't know what that means. Anyways, when I get back to the office, I need to pull whatever information I can on this particular case of this beheaded man. If Bethany's grandfather was so interested in this case, maybe the old man was onto something. Maybe this is related to the Huntsman. Then again, maybe not, but it's worth some digging when I have the time. Speaking of time, what time is it? Oh, no, I have to leave for the airport soon or I'll miss my flight. I should have given myself more time because this chest actually has a lot of useful information and details. Let's see. Is there anything else before I head out? Back to the note from 1708. The German version of the note appears to have a section that is partially illegible. I mean, the paper is hundreds of years old, so it makes sense that you can't read everything. What does the translated section say about this partially illegible section? Yes, here it is. It says something about removing twin swords from the box. I guess that's all the translator could read. What box? The music box? No, couldn't be the music box, because there are no twin swords to remove. I don't see any other boxes. And I wonder what happens when you remove the so-called twin swords. Does something good happen, or something bad? Well, just more mysteries for me, or someone else to solve, I guess. I better get going. Again, this is Emily Adams, and this concludes my recording.